It was a beautiful day in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Blue skies without a single cloud, a light wind that didn't turn yesterday's 3 inches of powder into a snowstorm, and an unseasonably warm day on the slopes. Because of his job as an aircraft mechanic for a major airline, he couldn't ski as often as he'd like, but he'd been saving up his summer vacations so he could ski at least a week every winter. This year, he chose Purgatory Ski Resort in Durango. He'd never been there before, but after dealing with the crowds at Aspen Ski Resort last winter, he decided to go to a smaller ski resort this year. He pushed off with his poles and rushed down the slope. When he was halfway down, another skier swept by on his left and clipped him. In response, he turned right and ended up right in a pine forest. He tried to slow down, but it was too late. He slammed his skis into the trunk of a large tree and collapsed on top of it. He didn't lose consciousness, but his eyes were spinning. He tried to get up, but his legs wouldn't hold him, and we fell again. He was about to try again when he felt a hand on his chest. "Stay down. Don't move or you may aggravate your injuries. Let me examine you first." He followed the movement of the hand until he saw a woman's face with a very serious expression. He tried to sit up again, but the hand pushed him down again. This time she said more forcefully, "I said lie down. I am a doctor. Let me examine you for serious injuries." He gave up the struggle and lay down on the soft snow. The woman started at his neck and began to probe the rest of his body, asking now and then, "Do you feel that?" Or, "Are you in pain?" "No." Or, "Not really," he answered. "Well, I don't feel any fractures, but we need to do a CT scan to make sure there's no brain damage." She held up 4 fingers and asked how many, to which he replied, 11. Her eyes widened with shock until he smiled. She replied, "I see your sense of humor has been preserved. I'll call the ski patrol to have you taken to the slope. An ambulance will be waiting for me there." As I lay on the CT scanner table waiting for the shocks to stop, I thought, shit, I didn't even recognize her name. From what I saw, she must be a good-looking woman. I'll have to track her down to thank her, and maybe ask her out. "My name is Eric Martin, and I told you about how I met my wife Kirsten 9 years ago. I didn't have to push her hard because from the first date we both realized we belonged together, and 6 months later we were husband and wife. I thought I'd won the Powerball lottery." Kirsten was simply stunning. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and a sexual appetite that seemed insatiable. It was just the two of us for now, because she didn't want the kids to interfere with her medical practice, and I didn't want them to interfere with our love life. We both had strong libidos, and even after 9 years, we both still wanted to make love 4 or 5 times a week. Everything was going well, until it went wrong. I didn't notice it right away. Or rather, I did notice it, but I thought it was probably because she was working too much. 2 or 3 times a week she would call and say she had a lot of patients and that it would be another hour before she could go home. As a result, she was too tired to agree to my requests to have fun under the sheets. As a result, our lovemaking dwindled to once every couple weeks. This went on for almost 6 months when she informed me that the hospital had lost one of its doctors and she would have to work even harder. Now she was coming home 2 or 3 hours late. At first, I tried to make her dinner, but then she said she had eaten in the hospital cafeteria and didn't want to eat. She just walked in the door, went upstairs to take a shower, then climbed into bed and fell asleep. At least I thought she fell asleep. When I approached the bed, her eyes were closed and she was snoring softly. When I tried to move over to her and snuggle, she rolled over onto her stomach and pulled the blanket tighter around her. A few months later, I returned home to find Kirsten and a man I didn't know sitting at the kitchen table drinking wine. I immediately felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, warning me of impending disaster. Then I heard the fateful words, "Sit down, Eric. We need to talk." As was often the case in our relationship, I complied with her request. Or was it a demand? "Eric, this is Dr. Steve Sorensen. We met a few months ago when he transferred to our hospital. We became friends, then lovers, and now I want a divorce so I can marry him. I froze for a minute or two, not reacting in any way. I didn't say anything or attack him because I knew it was over. Are you sure about this, Kirsten? Can't you wait a little while before you act? Give us time to talk things over? No. Why? Because Steve and I are expecting a baby. I sat like that for another 30 seconds before I told her, I'll give you one chance to change your mind. You have 10 seconds. Eric, I didn't mean for this to happen and I still love you. But the love that Steve and I share is stronger than anything I've ever felt for you. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Eric, be reasonable. There's no reason to act like a child. We can still be friends. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. With those words, Eric stood up and headed for the front door. You don't want to talk about it, Eric? No, but I'll find a way to answer it. As he closed the door behind him, Kirsten turned to Steve and asked, What do you think he meant? Eric pulled out of the driveway, turned left, and drove off. But he drove around the block, parked the car in an alley, and drove back to the house where he hid behind some bushes. He wanted to hear their conversation as they left. They came out of the house laughing. Steve said, What a fool! He really thought you were telling him the truth about the pregnancy, but it was a great idea to tell him we were having a baby so he wouldn't contest the divorce and give him a chance to finalize it quickly. He's always been naive. No matter what I tell him, he believes it, especially about me working late so we could go to your place and sleep together for a couple hours. Well, we won't have that problem anymore. You'll live with me and we'll get married. But I'm a little worried about one thing. If you cheated on him to be with me, how do I know you won't cheat on me? Kirsten hugged him and replied, I love you too much to ever be unfaithful. You will be for the rest of our lives. Eric took 2 weeks out of his annual vacation and spent them trying to figure out why he wasn't feeling anything. He had at least expected to hate her or want to attack her lover, but all he felt was emptiness, a lack of feelings for her. In the back of his mind, he wanted revenge on both of them, but those thoughts remained in the shadows until a friend intervened. Eric stretched out on the couch, trying to force himself to sleep, but knew that, like every night for the past 2 weeks, he would lie awake most of the night. Then he heard a knock on the door. He ignored it. Friends called and stopped by to help him through his emotional trauma, but it quickly became tiresome. The knocking happened again, louder this time. After a couple minutes, it stopped, and he thought, finally, they got the hint. But then the knocking turned into a rumble, as if someone was pounding on the door. Open up, Eric. I know you're in there. We need to talk. He went to the door and shouted, Leave me alone. I don't need company right now. Then a softer female voice spoke up. Let me in, Eric. It's me, Sherry. Sherry was one of his co-workers who had always treated him well, so he unlocked the door. Her first words were, My God, you look like shit, and you smell almost as bad. Since I took time off work, I saw no reason to take a shower. What are you doing here? Well, first I'm sending you to the shower, and then I'm going to stick these stinky clothes in the washing machine. Now get undressed. I can't do that in your presence. Trust me, there's nothing about this that I haven't seen before. I grew up taking care of 3 younger brothers. I'll turn my back, at least until you take a shower. When Eric stepped out of the shower, Sherry stood with a huge, fluffy towel in her hands to quickly cover him, but he noticed her quick glance downward. Good thing I'm not horny. She'd be embarrassed to see me, he thought. Changing into clean pajamas with jockey shorts underneath so his arousal wouldn't be noticeable if she showed up, he turned to her. Okay, why are you here? I didn't realize how devastated you would be by Kirsten's betrayal. I didn't want you to do something you'd regret later. Like beating up Kirsten's lover or shooting him. Do you have any guns in the house? No, guns. I admit I thought about those options, but she made her choice. There's nothing I can do to change her mind, and even if she changed her mind, I would never want her back. But don't you want revenge somehow? Since I've ruled out violence and she's not demanding anything from me in the divorce, I can't hurt her financially. I don't see any other options. Sherry replied, "Let me think about that for a while. But right now you look like you haven't slept since she left you." "I haven't slept. Well, maybe an hour here and there. I know how to fix that. Where are the blankets around here?" He pointed to the hall closet, from where she pulled out a plaid and a couple pillows and carried them to the couch. "Lie on your side, lean your back against the pillows." "What do you mean? I'm not ready for anything sexual." "Relax, Eric. That's not what I mean." After he got situated, Sherry told him to move back to make room for her. She lay with her back to him, pressed her ass against him, and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. After a few minutes, he was sound asleep, and she lay awake for another couple hours thinking about how to get back at Eric. Sherry woke up first. She thought about cuddling with him, but then realized that his morning wood was pressing against her. She knew it was just a reflex that all men have and not necessarily a sign of wanting sex, so she quietly removed his hands and got up. 10 minutes later, the smell of coffee woke him up. She turned and smiled at him. "I guess you got a good night's sleep last night." "I feel good, so I guess I did. But I still have a lot of catching up to do." "Then I'll have to stay a few more nights. Just let me know when it's time for me to leave and I'll go." They sipped their coffee for a few minutes. Then Sherry spoke. "I think I have a way to get back at your cheating wife. It will take a little time, maybe a few months. Are you ready for that?" "Okay, what have you got?" "Remember Yogi Berra's statement about everything that happens, happens?" "Yes. I thought it was a succinct statement that everyone eventually gets retribution for their bad deeds." "So that's exactly what we're going to do to Kirsten and her lover. First, we're going to wait for the divorce so they can get married and get comfortable. Then we have an affair with Steve and Kirsten finds out. She'll freak out and demand a divorce." "Sounds promising, but where are we going to find a woman to be his new mistress?" Sherry replied enthusiastically, "That will be my job, and I'll destroy his confidence in bed while I'm at it." "No way! I don't want you sleeping with Steve just so I can get even with him." "That's the beauty of my plan. I don't have to have sex with him. We just have to make Kirsten believe that's what's going on." "And how are we going to do that?" "Messages on her cell phone or computer from an anonymous caller telling her he's cheating on her, followed by phone calls from a woman who will compound her suspicions." 4 months later. Kirsten was finally living the way she'd always wanted, in the house she felt she deserved, not the one Eric had offered. The newly built 6,500 square foot home was luxurious in a new, stylish suburb of San Diego. They had expensive Mercedes cars that fit in a 3-car garage and a small sailboat in the harbor. Yes, this place had everything she wanted, except for the boredom that came with it. She wished she could go back to the job she'd had when she was Eric's wife, but her new husband wouldn't let her. According to him, she didn't fit the image he was trying to create, a successful doctor with a beautiful wife. When she told Steve about her boredom, he suggested she learn to use his desktop computer and make friends on the internet. She didn't want to, so he enrolled her in a 6-week introductory course at a local university. By the 3rd week, she was enthusiastic and had about 300 friends on Facebook. Sherry was excited about this new experience. Her younger brother Mike was a top-notch computer geek and bragged that he could hack into any computer, which was just right for her schemes. She asked him if he could hack into Dr. Steve Sorensen's computer and insert some false messages into his email account. To do that, I'd need to know the IP address of his computer. "What is that?" she asked. "It's the Internet Protocol number assigned to his computer. Every device connected to the Internet has a unique IP address. If I plug it into your computer, you can send and receive emails like him, and no one will ever know that it's really you on the other end." Where can we find the IP address of Sorensen's computer? Give me 5 minutes alone with his computer and I'll recognize it. That's impossible unless we break into his house, and I don't need that badly enough to go to jail for it. There's another way that might work. Do you know his home address? Not yet, no. I could follow him home after work and recognize him, but what would come of that? There's an illegal database on the internet where IP addresses overlap with street addresses, but that won't work if the guy's computer is encrypted. It won't be in the database. I don't know if his site is encrypted or not. Then bring me the street address and I'll see what I can do for you, sis. Oh, thank you, Mike. I take back all those times I teased you about your geekiness. Is that even a word? Probably not. But before I'm done, everyone will know you as the king of geek. When can you do that? As soon as I have his address. I can even do it tomorrow if you're in a hurry. No. Let's wait a few days until I can discuss it with Eric. If I bring him to you this weekend, will you explain everything to him? Sure, if he brings a beer. I work best when I'm a little tipsy. How lightly? Oh, 2 packs should be enough. Just for you or for all of us? We'll need a whole case if we all drink. Saturday night, Eric, Sherry, and Mike gathered at his apartment to finalize their plan. Sherry took charge of the operation and explained to Eric what they were up to. Mike now has the IP address of Sorensen's computer, and using an application he created, will be able to send emails to Steve Sorensen's computer from any fictitious sender. In this case, a sexy blonde. If you haven't already guessed, I'm talking about me. Although I'm not going to meet him face to face, if things go wrong, the woman who sent him the sexy emails might show up. Have you guessed yet? Everyone nodded. Next, I'm going to start sending him emails and messages as a sexual admirer, which will get more and more sexual as things progress. After a couple of weeks, my messages will become very explicit, describing things we've done together and things I want to do with him the next time we meet at our favorite motel. They have to be vividly described so that Kirsten, when she sees them, will believe them, so I may have to practice with you, Eric. Eric looked down at the floor with a red face, showing his embarrassment. She looked at him questioningly and asked, "Would you mind practicing with me?" He moved in his seat to cover his pants and quietly replied, "No, no." Good. That's what I was hoping you'd say. So, is everyone on board with this plan? Spoke Mike. I only see one problem with it. In order for this not to interfere with their marriage, she has to find out about it somehow. Mike smiled. On that point, I'm one step ahead of you. Let me tell you how I'm going to do it. Most people rarely turn off their computers. They just leave them on standby. But that makes it easier for a hacker, and that would be me, to get a hold of their computer. Once I use his IP address to infiltrate Steve's computer, I can intercept information from it and add a few custom applications to make it execute my commands. Then, if they haven't locked the built-in video camera above the screen, which most users don't, I can get the camera to show us who's near it without displaying it on Steve's screen. So we'll monitor his camera, and when it tells us that Kirsten is in the room, we'll show one of the fake emails from Steve's virtual girlfriend. If she looks at the screen and sees a suspicious letter, Kirsten will want to open it to see who it's from, especially if it's a woman's name. The following Saturday, Kirsten was cleaning and went into Eric's, now Steven's, office to vacuum and dust. The computer in Eric's apartment alerted Sherry to Kirsten's presence in the room. She saw the video of Kirsten vacuuming the study on the screen and sent the first email on the list of deceptions they had planned for her. They decided to start with a set of emails to make Kirsten believe that Steve was cheating on her like she had done with Eric. When the message arrived on Steve's computer, Kirsten didn't hear the beep that signaled an incoming message because of the noise of the vacuum cleaner. Sherry waited until she turned it off and sent the message again. This time, when she heard the beep, she looked at the computer screen and saw the message, "You have mail." She assumed it was a business message for her husband and started to dust off the computer desk. But curiosity took over and she sat down at the desk and opened the mail. What she read shocked her. Hello, my stud. What do we have planned for tomorrow? We could go out for lunch or takeaway, and we'll have more time to have fun in bed like last week. After what you did to me, it took me almost a whole week to recover. But now I'm ready for another trip to Pleasure Island. Are you ready? Call me. I love you, your sweet baby girl. Oh, God, she thought. Did Steve really have a mistress? No, it must have been one of his friends playing a prank on him. Steve promised me that when we got married, he would never cheat on me. He's my husband now and shouldn't joke around. But then she realized, Steve cheated on his ex-wife to have an affair with me. What's to stop him from doing it again? I have to find out. She sat down at the computer again and scrolled through the messages from the last couple months. She clicked on the oldest one. Hey, handsome. I saw you at the club last night and told myself I just had to get myself some of these. At your height, you must be very rich. Of course, to be sure, I'd have to check it out with my own eyes. I know this is a little cavalier of me, but are you free for dinner Friday night? I'm desperate. Scrolling down the page, Kirsten saw that Steve had replied. I don't have sex with strangers. I don't even know your name. The woman replied, You can call me anything you want, but my mom used to call me Susan Barbara, Sugar Baby. The reply, obviously from Steve, invited her to name a place and time, and he would meet her there. Kirsten continued to leaf through Steve's email and found 6 more emails in which they set up a time and date to meet and have sex. She even found one that said they were having sex at her house, on her bed. Steve has a mistress. I can't believe it. I told him before the wedding that neither of us would have sex. When he comes home from golf, I'm gonna beat him unconscious. I should have known it would turn out this way. If a man cheats once, as he did in marriage, he'll probably do it again. I'll take away his ability to make love for a month. Well, maybe not that long. I'll need it sooner. Maybe I'll give him fake sex and leave him hanging. Bring him to the edge a few times and then roll over and fall asleep. Back home, Steve put his bag of clubs in the hall closet and started up the stairs to the shower. Stay where you are, asshole. You have some explaining to do. Let me shower first and then we'll talk. No, we'll talk now before you go wash off the smell of sex with your mistress. Steve's eyes widened at that remark. He had no idea what she was talking about, but he needed to find out. He turned around, walked back to the set, and turned to face her. I have no idea what you're talking about, dear. He decided to start softly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Your sugar baby. Steve was puzzled. What's a sugar baby, dear? Where did you get this crazy idea about someone named Sugar Baby? From the emails on your computer. That can't be right. Show me. She grabbed his arm, dragged him into her office, turned on her computer, and clicked on the mail icon. Turning her back to the screen, she held out her hand to him. Look! Look at these emails, you cheating bastard! Steve saw nothing but a blank screen. Look at what? There's nothing there. Kirsten looked around. Where did they go? I was just reading them this afternoon. Well, there's nothing there now. She thought for a moment, then snapped into a scream. You erased them, you lying, cheating bastard! What did I supposedly erase? Emails between you and your mistress, some woman named Sugar Baby. What mistress? Were you sleeping with her before we were married, or is it someone you added recently? Am I not good enough for you in bed? I practically let you mess around with me, but you have no idea how much I hate the perversions you've brought into our marital bed. When you want something you saw in the latest movie, you ignore my feelings. You just want to get yours and leave me lying next to you sexually frustrated. What are you talking about? I give you pleasure every time we make love. Maybe you think so, but half the time I'm just faking it to make you feel like the world's greatest lover. Why didn't you tell me? Then I would have criticized your lovemaking, and I've read what happens to a husband's ego when his wife says he's terrible in bed. So now I'm a failure at lovemaking? I didn't say that. Yes, you did. Maybe not in those terms, but it's pretty clear to me that's what you meant. Damn it, Steve, you're always twisting my words to make me look like the bad half in this marriage. Maybe I should go back to Eric. He already knows what a bitch you are, so it wouldn't occur to him to take you back. Steve dodged in time to keep the dish from hitting him in the head. Get out of my house, right now! No. Problem. Consider me gone. But it'll take me a day or so to get all my stuff out of here. All your stuff will be in the driveway by 5 o'clock tomorrow. What happens to them after that is your problem. You can't do that to me. We're married. The house is half mine. No, it isn't. Eric gave me the house when he left. But it's supposed to rain tomorrow? Well, I guess you'll have to work fast. Can I at least sleep here tonight? Not in my bed. You can spread out on the couch. Eric and Sherry found out about the breakup after Steve left for work the next morning. He had been away from home for no more than 5 minutes when Kirsten called her ex-husband at his office. Hello? This is Mr. Sorensen's office. This is Sherry. What can I do for you? You can put my ex-husband Eric on the phone. Now! Yes, ma'am. Can I tell him who's calling? You know exactly who I am. Now let me talk to Eric. Please hold, ma'am. Sherry burst into Eric's office. She's the one on the phone. What do you want me to do? I don't want to talk to her. Leave her on hold until she hangs up. Kirsten was patient. She really needed to influence Eric with her charms, so she stayed on the line for 15 minutes before hanging up and immediately dialing again. This time it was busy. Hi guys, this is going to be a pretty big post. I feel like I need an outlet from everything that's happened, and I hope to find some positives in it. Background: my wife and I have been married for 4 years, and have been together for a total of 10 years. We both met through our professions and fell in love. According to both of us, we have had an incredible time together with very few fights. I would say less than 5 to 6 in all that time. Both of my spouses are very active and took a huge interest in life together, which made our relationship really strong. 3 years ago, our daughter was born, and we bought our first condo. Everything was coming together in the best possible way. My wife took a year off and told me that she loved being a mother, and that she was thinking about having a second child. She was previously against it, only wanted one. My wife and I decided that she would go back to work part-time so she could spend more time at home with her daughter. She was fine with that. My wife continued to go to work part-time, but she was not happy with the job and felt she had much more to offer than the position she held. About a year ago, my wife applied for a very senior position at a new company. I advised her to take a look from the outside and go for it. My wife is very smart, but on paper she didn't have all the credentials for this job she was applying for. I told her that if she could get the interview, that was all she needed to shine. She ended up interviewing and subsequently got the job. Her salary had almost doubled, but she would now be working 5 days a week rather than 4 days one week and 3 days the next, part-time. A condition of working 5 days a week was that one of those days must include a Saturday. My wife and I went from taking 3 to 4 days a week off together to 1 day a week. I worked 10 hours, 4 days a week. We both discussed it at the time and thought we could handle it, as it was a significant pay increase, and I would stay on to take more care of our daughter. Within the first 3 months of her new job, one of the team members decided to leave, leaving her effectively in 2 roles. Her job became very stressful. She was constantly moonlighting for an hour or so in the evening and going through work emails when she got home. I supported her as best I could, but I could see she was busy. I was going through a very difficult emotional time at work during this time, and I came home several times to talk to her about it. I could see that she had other things on her mind and was basically just brushing me off. I felt deeply hurt about this and basically just shut out further conversations about my feelings and thought I would just keep them to myself, the worst thing to do. In February, my wife came up to me and told me that she was upset that I wasn't helping out as much around the house since she works a lot. There was fairness in her words, and I understood her. During this conversation, I asked her if she still loved me, and she said yes, of course. I figured it was just a conversation you have when you're a little angry at work and take your anger out on your husband. Within a few weeks, I started helping with the cooking, but then I stopped helping again. I still looked after my daughter, cleaned the house, etc. She always said I was a great dad, but I started hacking again and stopped cooking. I ended up buying myself a new computer and playing video games at night because I thought it was my escape from reality. My wife would ask me to go to bed, and I would reply that I didn't feel like it and wanted to lie around some more. This went on for a few months and then stopped. I realize now that this was a serious sign of a broken relationship. In early September, I noticed that my wife became very distant. I would talk about future plans or trips, and she would reply that she didn't need to book them because she didn't feel like going there. I thought that was a bit odd, but didn't ponder it for long. Sex had dried up the week before D-Day, and she was constantly making excuses not to have it. I remember a few days before D-Day we had sex, and I felt so uncomfortable, like she didn't want to be there. I realized something was wrong. A few days later, we were in the kitchen, and I realized something was wrong. I asked if she was okay, and she simply said that yes, she was fine. I kept questioning, and she looked at me and said, "I'm not happy anymore. I don't love you." At that moment, my whole world that I had built with her shattered. I cried uncontrollably, and we went for a car ride. I was in a state of complete shock. How can you feel so good, and then a week before D-Day not feel like you should, and she says this? I just didn't understand. My wife and I talked in the car, away from my daughter, for a few hours, and she took it pretty coldly. She said she felt like we were distant from each other, distant and like we were roommates. She stated that she didn't think I was emotionally developed enough. She cited my playing games on the computer as the main reason. I tried to understand her point of view on everything she said and definitely realized that she could feel the way she felt. I begged her to see a therapist, and she agreed, but reluctantly. She stated that she wanted our daughter to succeed. I was pleased, because that's at least something. I sat back, did a lot of self-reflection, and thought, this is not the person I am, and certainly not the person I want to be. Hearing from my wife that she no longer loved me was the most painful experience of my life. I cherished my wife and daughter more than anything in the world. Over the next 6 weeks, I began to grow as a man and really stepped up. I cooked almost every day, kept the house clean, completely gave up social media because I knew it was just pointless scrolling through other people's lives, and started reading a book a day, everything imaginable about mindfulness, gratitude, love, marriage, and everything in between. I began to truly realize that marriage needs work all the time, and being present in the moment is something I hadn't done for 4 to 5 months. I realized how I could become comfortable and complacent in my marriage and forget about date nights. And because time together is so important, I started actively listening to my wife and reading her better than I ever had before. During this process, I was falling more and more in love with her, even though she wasn't giving me much in return. I noticed that it was strange that most of the time she didn't appreciate me for what I was doing. I didn't expect it, but I thought it was strange that she wasn't giving me anything. I felt like I was going in circles, and I tried even harder to get some recognition. She kept telling me that I felt like I was suffocating her with everything I did. I slowed down, but I noticed that she was becoming even more distant, and I started doing things to help again. I wrote her a love letter and left it on the kitchen table for her to see when I was at work. It was very sweet, with touching information about how we met, etc. It was something I don't normally do, but I really wanted to. A few hours later, I received a text from her that read, "I got your email. Thank you. X. I couldn't believe how cold and heartless it was. It felt like a response to a coworker, not a husband and best friend you've been with for 9.5 years. My wife and I started seeing a counselor, both together and separately. My counselor of 30 years was shocked at the progress I had made in such a short period of time and really saw how much I had grown as a man. My wife saw it too, but didn't pay much attention to it. During the 6-week period, I noticed that my wife became obsessed with her phone. It was face down wherever she went, and she would take it with her anywhere in the house. I began to have serious suspicions, as I knew it was not hers at all. One day, I noticed a WhatsApp message from her boss when she was showing me a video on her phone. My wife must have messaged him saying, "I'll call you later," and he replied with a thumbs-up emoji. She quickly deleted the message, which struck me as odd. About 15 minutes later, I was standing next to her looking through her recent WhatsApp contacts and didn't see her boss's name there. She must have deleted it. I started adding more and more. I noticed that my wife and I did communicate for a few days while we were at home, and then she would leave for a run with her boss after work and come back very distant and cold. She would explain it away by saying that there are good days and bad days, but I knew something was wrong. One day she was about to take a shower and I saw her put her phone on charge and turned it off while she was in the shower. After getting out of the shower, she picked up her phone and said, "My phone must have automatically turned off." I knew she was lying. I told her about it in the kitchen of our house and she turned white as if she had seen a ghost. She sat stunned for a few seconds and said, "I turned it off because I didn't want you to see my best friend's messages about us." I knew this best friend was close to her. I don't know why, but my gut told me that her facial expression didn't fit the crime. But I bluntly asked her if she was having an affair, and she completely denied it. 2 days before D-Day, my wife invited me to a black tie work dinner attended by some very high-profile people. She said she wanted me to see her work and see what she was all about. I had been asking to be invited to one of these events for a long time and finally got an invitation. I was excited. My wife told me that we should not be physically active at this event because it is a black tie event and it was inappropriate. I explained that I didn't want to look unprofessional, and since we were having problems, I understood her predicament. The day before D-Day, my wife and I attended a black tie dinner. I was seated at a table with most of her co-workers whom she introduced to me. I noticed her boss was sitting at another table and I thought it was odd that she didn't introduce me, since they go jogging together once a week and she doesn't talk about him much at home. During the presentation, I noticed my wife constantly looking over my shoulder trying to make eye contact with her boss. It was persistent and reminded me of what I did when I first met my wife. That very first part of the love process when you are in love with each other. Out of the corner of my eye, I looked at her boss and noticed he was doing the same thing. When he made eye contact with her, he would look at me and quickly look away. Then my wife would look at me and ask if my dinner was okay. I realized this was a sign of guilt and something was going on. I continued the evening, not wanting to ruin it in front of her coworkers. At the end of dinner, on the way home, I laid it out to my wife that something was wrong with her boss. She didn't categorically deny anything, which further bolstered my confidence. She simply said I was imagining things. I came home and explained that I thought she and her boss were having an emotional affair or something more. She said she enjoyed his company and that she liked and cared about him, but tried to play dumb and say what kind of emotional affair? I knew my wife was smart and she knew what it was. We ended the evening talking. D-Day. The next day, she went to work. As she was about to finish work, she texted me that she was going to go out for drinks after work with her co-workers. She had started doing this frequently over the past 6 months, which is completely out of character. My daughter kept saying, "Mommy's not coming home," or "Mommy's at work." She was noticing this, and she wasn't even 3 years old yet. Anyway, my wife said she was going to have a drink or two and then come home quickly. I said, "Sure, go for it." My wife ended up coming home 4 hours later and said she had a good time before getting in the shower. I asked her who she went out with and she told me about 3 to 4 coworkers and her boss. I thought it was so weird that she was out with him in a group setting after I had just told her I was suspicious. While she was in the shower, I checked her phone. I noticed that there was no conversation with her boss, but she had a text she had written to her boss but hadn't sent yet that read, "I love you too. I just know you're not in a good place." My whole world just came crashing down. My wife was telling her boss that she loved him. I just couldn't believe it. For the last 6 weeks since she told me she didn't love me, I've been doing so many things right, and she just lured me in knowing she was in love with someone else. I always thought that everything I do goes unnoticed, and it was so surprising, because she said that if I had made these changes in February when she and I were talking, she would love me more now. I told her about it, and she was just at a loss for words. The first thing she could say was, "Why are you going through my phone?" I was so stunned that I just didn't know how to sort out my feelings. I was running around the house pelting her with questions left, right, and center. My wife told me it was only an emotional connection and lasted about 3 months. My wife knew that if the relationship came out, she would lose her job as it was a huge conflict of interest, but she continued anyway. That night, I told her to get out, and she left to go to her friends. I was still trying to make sense of everything. How could she do that to me? How could anyone do that to anyone? We lived 9 wonderful years without any problems, and you do this? I sit at home and look after your daughter while you pursue your career, and you just shit on me? It was really hard for me. My emotions were running high, but I knew I still loved her very much. I knew that the person she had become in the last 3 to 4 months was not the person she was. My wife was never a liar, a cheater, and didn't like to drink after work. Her boss took advantage of her vulnerability and told her what she wanted to hear, while at home she was not getting the fulfillment of those emotions. I spent the next few days devastated and hurt, but I knew I wanted to make it work, not only for my daughter, but for everything we had built together in 10 years. I also knew that the person she had turned her into was not who she was. I took off my wedding ring and she noticed it. I told her I took it off because you hurt me, and I don't think the ring means anything now. My wife was still wearing her rings, and feeling guilty, the next day she took hers off and put it in her bedside drawer. We talked a lot, and she told me that she hated herself for what she had done and felt disgusted that she could tell someone with whom she only had an emotional connection that she loved him. I told her that everything he told you was infatuation, not love. He was telling you what you wanted to hear when you were missing that home. She kept asking me if I understood how he got to this point, and I was very angry with him. I told her I understand that it may be a perfect storm of many things, but I will never justify what you did. Over the next few days, my wife and I hardly slept at all. I was home watching our daughter, and she slept on a friend's couch. 4 days after D-Day, my wife came home and we had a long talk. She was completely exhausted and looked like death. I told her to sleep in our bed tonight and I would sleep on the couch so she could get some sleep. She agreed. Before she went to bed, my wife continued to apologize and told me that she needed to figure out for herself why she did what she did. I told her that people make mistakes, although I can never justify what you did, and my trust in you was ripped to shreds. People do make mistakes. We are not perfect. My wife said she has stopped all text and phone conversations with her boss and only meets with him at work on a professional level when she needs to talk to other co-workers, which is maybe twice a week for 10 to 15 minutes. My wife said she is still confused about how she feels and has been feeling down for the past 7 weeks. I told her that it's because she is emotionally involved with her boss outside of the marriage, and then comes home and sees her husband has made huge strides but doesn't give him the credit he deserves. I told her I could imagine how mentally draining that was. My wife explained to me that she was happy with our life before she had this affair, but wondered if she was truly happy. She told me that for once she had put herself first, and that was part of the reason she did so. I told her that she has always put others before herself since I've known her, and that she does it because it makes her happy. I said that once you put yourself first before everything else, look what happened. You lost all your core beliefs and morals and had an affair with someone. I told her she was doing exactly what her mother did to her father 4 years ago. She told me at the time that she couldn't believe what her mother had done and that she never wanted to be her mom. And here we are. A few days later, my wife came home before I got back and took our daughter out to dinner. When I got home, I noticed that her rings were not in the drawer where they had been for a few days and thought she must have put them on. She came home a little later, and I noticed that she had the rings on. When she wasn't with my daughter, I told her it was good that she was wearing her rings again, and she looked at me, smiled, and said, "You don't have your own." I took that as a good sign that being away for a few days had affected her, and she was starting to realize what she had done. I went out to play squash and returned a few hours later. I hugged her and, looking into her eyes, said, "I love you." And before I could say anything else, she replied, "I love you too." For the first time, I felt it was sincere. Before, when I said that, she would say nothing back, or she would say, "You know I care about you." It meant a positive step forward. We sat down and I just listened to her. She told me that she had considered a few places to stay for a while to clear her head, but was frustrated with how crappy they were and that she was comfortable at home. My wife said she needed space for 3 to 4 weeks to appreciate everything she did without everyone being in her ear. My wife has always been a person who likes personal space to reflect, and I could clearly see that she was being bombarded by our close family, me and her friends. My wife said she needed time to understand why her feelings for her boss were so strong and whether it was infatuation or something more. I agreed that time apart would be helpful, although I still love her very much. I wanted her to have a clear mind before we continued the marriage. I wanted her to realize that the grass wasn't always greener on the other side, and that what she had at home, a family, meant more to her than an emotional affair with her boss. Although there were some challenging times in our marriage at the beginning of the year, I grew as a man, realized the role I played, and learned how communication is the key to everything, especially talking on a deep level. I also realized that being present in the present moment and grateful for what you have is essential. Complacency in marriage or in life is a killer, and I realized I never want to do that again. The next day, my wife rented an apartment for 4 weeks. We both agreed that we would talk to each other throughout, and our daughter would stay with her on occasion. Several times a week, my wife would come over for dinner, and we would go out with our daughter together. I wanted to maintain a normal relationship with my daughter as much as possible, and so did she. Although I am devastated that my wife will be gone for 4 weeks, and I don't know what the future holds, I know this is a process that has to run its course as we kept talking about it at home, and it was becoming overwhelming for both of us. I don't think we could have handled it at home if she wasn't assessing the situation for herself. I find it odd that I'm fighting for my wife after what she's put me through over the last 7 to 8 weeks, but I'm clinging to the hope that in that week or so, when we were communicating a lot, when my boss wasn't texting her, I could see that my old wife was back and everything was fine. I guess I came to this thread to see if anyone has had similar situations and what I can do to try to mend the relationship. In the end, she will make the final decision on whether or not she thinks a marriage of 9 years and what we have built is worth another crack. I just feel ashamed that I don't feel more anger for what she did, but I feel like I've grown so much to realize that's not what she is. Is there anything I can do to fix this situation, or do I need to let it run its course? Kate and Mike were calmly having dinner in their warm, busy kitchen when, after drinking from her juice box, Kate casually dropped a bombshell. "Hey, Mike, guess what? At today's meeting, they've informed us that some of our top managers will be traveling out of town next month for advanced training," she said with a twinkle. "And I'm one of them." Mike seemed surprised to hear this news. "Wow, Kate, that is amazing. How long will you be away?" "Oh, just a week," she said, her face lighting with genuine pleasure. "They've arranged for our tickets and hotel accommodations." Mike felt a surge of pride. She was overjoyed to see that her effort and dedication had finally borne fruit. They were married for 6 years, having met through work. Their connection had survived the moment they met. And then even after Mike had done what he would do next at a higher-level job at another company while Kate stayed behind, their relationship only got deeper. They soon moved in together, and a year later, he proposed. Their life together was mostly happy, though Kate would get a little annoyed when Mike tended to dive into meetings and she felt ignored. So when she learned they were appreciated, that made Mike twice as happy. That meant she was spending her energy doing something good rather than complaining about being unproductive. Before long, her suitcase was packed and she was shedding weight. Mike even considered taking a half day, just so that he could see her off, just so he could support her. But Kate was quick to insist that it was not needed. Mike hesitated, surprised by the sudden brush-off, but in the end, he respected her wishes. "If that type of thing is what you want, then okay," he said. The following evening, on his drive home from work, Mike microwaved the meal Kate had left him and plonked on the couch to watch television. By the time he reached the middle of dinner, it struck him. He needed to check something for work. Some big clients were coming to town shortly, and his team had searched for hotels near the office. The secretary had provided him with a list of choices, but none quite fit. And then it occurred to him, he actually knew one far superior hotel. He scarfed down his meal, grabbed Kate's laptop from the coffee table in the living room, and started looking. That's when he spotted something odd. But then he saw something strange in the search history. Someone had searched for hotels along the coast just a couple of days earlier. A mixed sense of unease crossed over him. Setting aside his original task, he began perusing the browser history with greater diligence. Kate had in fact been searching for hotels, but not near the city where the training was supposed to take place. She had been searching for 2 at a completely different location. Mike's face fell into an utter frown. Something wasn't right. Once he figured it out, he was determined to get to the bottom of it, and he made a phone call the following morning. As soon as he got to the office, he called Kate's office. After a few rings and a brief hold, a cheerful voice he knew answered him. "Hi, Ashley. It's Mike. Remember me?" he said warmly. "Mike, of course I remember you." Ashley laughed a kind laugh. "How's everything?" Mike took a steady breath. "I'm calling because Kate told me the company was sending her to train in another city. I wanted to see what hotel she's at. I can't reach her." There was a slight pause. Then Ashley's voice came back, careful. "Mike, no one has been sent anywhere for training. Are you sure?" On hearing this from Ashley, Mike's suspicion deepened. "Hold the phone. Kate is on vacation now?" His wife had lied to him. Compelling his tone to sound nonchalant, he persisted. "Maybe I got mixed up. On that note, Ashley, is anyone else on your team taking time off these days, or just Kate?" Ashley responded, "Not too many, really," after a few keystrokes. "Actually, Brian Stevens, one of our other managers, just went on vacation yesterday. He's new. You don't know him, probably. He started when you were away." Mike felt his stomach drop. But pieces of a puzzle were now falling into place that he didn't like. Summoning himself to a polite goodbye, he thanked Ashley and relayed well-wishing to a couple of former co-workers, and hung up with a heavy heart. Kate, what the bloody hell are you playing at? He desperately wanted to believe that this was all just some terrible misunderstanding, but things didn't look too good. Curious for more information, Mike decided to ring the hotels that Kate had been researching online. His anxiety spiked when he called 5 different places and found no record of her name. He was a paranoid, jealous fool. But something was nibbling away at him, prompting him to push forward. Then finally a breakthrough. Dialing the next hotel, he put all of his charm to work to extract information from the receptionist, casually inquiring if a woman matching his wife's description had checked in there. The receptionist, however, wouldn't divulge anything to a stranger on the phone. Mike was about ready to lose all hope when something he recognized in the background made his heart drop. A familiar laugh. It was fragile, but real. Kate. Realizing he'd been caught, he hurriedly apologized, changed his tactics, and asked how many rooms were available instead. "Sorry, I can barely hear you. Could you speak up?" Mike screamed, and the receptionist screamed back the hotel's rote sales pitch. As that one rang, he answered a second line and called Kate. Her reply came almost immediately. The soft hissing in the background suggested she was not alone. "Hey, sweetie. Coming back from a break. Going back to class," she said in a light voice. "Hello, Kate," he said flatly, though he was now sweating. "I was just calling to be seeing how the training's going." "What are they covering now that aren't they?" Kate jumped in right away. She started listing details of the lectures, improvising. But Mike barely listened. He was hearing both the voices from the calls overlapping each other. The receptionist was reading off hotel amenities, loud and clear. And then, the final blow. A faltering apologia, barely above a whisper. "Brian, Kate, here's your key. Sorry for the wait." Mike's blood ran cold. The very same Brian Stevens. Her lover. Though his chest felt as if it had been slabbed with angry heat, he determined he wouldn't let it blow up over the phone. What was the point? She wasn't even in town. Oh no, he was going to be smart about this. 1 week later. Kate had got home before noon and Mike was still at work. Surviving it all had given her euphoria. To be perfect. Total bliss. Her getaway with Brian had been all she'd ever wanted. They'd been growing closer for months, and this trip had only cemented it. It had been his idea to come away this entire vacation, and she loved the way he made her feel so easy and young and wanted. They definitely hadn't left their room, sealed in their own little cocoon. But then she stepped out onto her apartment floor, and the world hit her. There were a few bags lying around in the hallway. Her bags. Her stomach twisted. What the hell? She ran to the door, and panic hit her as she struggled to locate the key, but when she tried to unlock it, the key wouldn't turn. Locked out. Her heart racing, she took out her phone and called Mike, picking up on the second ring. "So, you're back," he said, deadpan. "Did you get your things? Nothing was stolen, correct?" Kate's pulse thundered. "Mike, what in hell is going on?" she yelled. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Maybe you might want to explain that to me? Well, should I ask Brian instead?" His voice was cold as ice. She choked up a bit. "Well, whatever," he continued, his tone peremptory. "You can go anywhere you want. There is no place in my house for a liar." Then he hung up. Kate's mind was spinning, and she felt paralyzed. How had he found out? Where had she slipped up? Desperation clawed at her as she paced in front of the door, weighing her options. One option remained. Her hands quaking, she called Brian. Her stomach drops even harder the second he picks up. He spoke with the same defeated tone that hers did. And heard in the background, an echo said, he too had been booted. Mike had gotten to them both. It's how one seemingly harmless lie unraveled into a gut-wrenching betrayal, one that shattered everything. Mike never forgave her. He cut all ties and never looked back. No, he was not embittered about love or marriage. He had only learned one thing. Next time, he'd zoom in a little more.